He was engaged in a prolonged aerial battle against Velzard. But there was no fatigue. Because neither of them are serious. A white world. All the living people living in this land, including the plants and trees, had been turned into ice statues at the beginning. This meant that they could be resurrected if they dispelled Velzard's power. From that point of view, Velzard's aim seemed different from Feldway's. Having said that, Guy's words didn't get through to Velzard. He tried to convince her not to do anything stupid, but she wouldn't listen. Velzard kept attacking Guy with a bewitching smile. It was all child's play, but because the magical energy she put into it was enormous, it was dangerous to let his guard down. And so, even though Guy didn't need to go all out, he couldn't just ignore Velzard's every move. Both sides were probing, trying to figure out each other's bottoms, and gradually increasing the power of their techniques. Attacks aimed at fatal wounds were occasionally mixed in, but both sides were familiar with each other's tactics. They instantly saw through and were seen through, rendering them ineffective. They were so natural that even if a third party with outstanding powers saw them, they would be indistinguishable from other attacks. That was how isolated Guy and Velzard's abilities were. They both had zero wear and tear. Velzard is currently the strongest dragon species next to Veldanava. She can endlessly generate magical energy within her body, rendering the concept of a war of attrition meaningless. Strictly speaking, a specific condition is required to become invincible. That was precisely what would complete the white, sealed world. Frozen world, eternal world frozen by the mana blizzard. In this space where ice and snow rage, Velzard's mana circulates endlessly. Because the rate of recovery surpasses the rate of consumption, it effectively achieves an inexhaustible supply of magical power. If it were Velgrand, continuously unleashing high-output secret techniques would eventually wear her down. However, with Velzard, that strategy would be meaningless. He knew that. Even among the beings known as dragons that seemed to be the embodiment of irrationality, Velzard was on another level. In order to fight her, he needed to keep his own exhaustion as low as possible. But for Guy, it was no trouble. He utilized the magical particles floating in the air, much like humans with limited magical power, without using his own magical energy. Gathering magical particles from the environment takes time, and the efficiency of casting spells is poor. However, in terms of the rate of consumption, it allows him to conserve his own strength. Also, if Guy was handling it, the accuracy and power of his magic was impeccable. The only problem was probably that almost all magic wouldn't work on Velzard. Well, that's the problem. If it doesn't work, then there's no point. Even if he understood that, it was better than attacking with his own magical energy. You must repeatedly launch attacks to find an opening in Velzard's defenses. Only then will the path to victory open up. You must conserve your magical energy and save it for the final, decisive blow. That's why Guy was playing a nerve-wracking battle that made him feel faint, but the fact that he wasn't tired at all was no surprise that he had dignity. Guy narrowed his eyes in exasperation and looked over at Velzard. That's the question of why she's not going all out. If Velzard were to unleash a powerful move, he had planned to counter it and make his move. However, Velzard remains persistently cautious, consistently holding back and observing the situation. Tisk, I knew it wouldn't be the same as the first time we fought, but I'm surprised she's this patient. Velzard was selfish and capricious. She had nothing to do with holding back. Even during her initial battle with Guy, Velzard had become frustrated with Guy for not acting as she expected, causing her to rush and make mistakes in the fight. Knowing Velzard's personality well, Guy intended to set up traps in the same manner this time as well. However, Velzard had no openings. The magic-infused ice and snow had completely destroyed all the traps Guy had set. Even I had become much stronger than I was back then. He'd assumed he'd win more easily, so Guy had no choice but to acknowledge Velzard's growth. And then, with each passing moment, the situation was changing to something disadvantageous for Guy. Velzard's mana was enormous, and the magicules that gushed out had turned into blizzards and raged. The frozen earth of demons that would not allow life to exist was being completed in this land. Heaven and earth filled with Velzard's magical energy, bearing their fangs at Guy as she wished. If that was all there was to it, he could deal with it, but as he continued to observe, Guy felt something was off. Velzard's behavioral patterns were clearly unnatural. Velzard specialized in brute force, relying on her own power. As an absolute powerhouse, she had no need for tricks or deception. But right now, she was using her tactics with great care. So much so that it's more natural to suspect that someone's intentions are interfering, than to be surprised that they've been able to fight like that. He didn't think anyone was controlling her, but Guy decided to face Velzard under the assumption that a third party existed. And apparently, that choice was correct. Thanks to their careful attention on the battlefield, they knew that Testarossa and the others had arrived here. They knew what they were after, and they even knew the current state of the world. What happened to Remure? No, more importantly, is Ivarage coming? I've got no choice but to take her on. Guy felt bitter, thinking that it had come to that after all. Even though Velzard alone was a problem, the worst came to pass. But there was also good news. Thanks to Testarossa, the existence of a third party had become a sure thing. Moreover, all he had to do was leave that opponent to her. There are few individuals skilled enough to earn Guy's recognition, but with Testarossa, there's no doubt. Thinking this, Guy begins making arrangements to resolve the situation as quickly as possible. Call my blockheads over. If they're going to intercept Ivarage and Dammergania, there's no point in letting them protect Leon's place. He intervened in Testarossa and Valgryn's conversation and relayed their instructions. There are many things to do, and there is no way to let talented subordinates play. That was how the situation had moved. Guy was relieved that the magical power in this land had stabilized. That's Testarossa for you. Rain and Misery were pretty good, too. He was satisfied for the first time in a while. Velzard was in the midst of joy. It was hard to tell from her expression, but she was enjoying the battle with Guy from the bottom of her heart. She fought Guy a long time ago. The reason was that she just couldn't stand the existence his brother Veldanava, the Star King Dragon, acknowledged. Even if my brother admits it, I won't. With that momentum, she challenged Guy, and then drew. But to Velzard, that was equivalent to defeat. In contrast to Velzard, who boasted the second largest amount of magicules after Veldanava at the time, Guy's had less than a tenth of her energy. And that wasn't all. There was the presence or absence of power, which was supposed to be a decisive difference in strength. Despite possessing the invincible authority, the ultimate skill, King of Patience, Gabriel, bestowed upon him by Veldanava, Velzard was unable to defeat Guy, who only had a mere unique skill. This fact hurt Velzard's pride. It was an overwhelmingly advantageous condition, but they'd drawn it, so it couldn't be helped. After that incident, Velzard decided to observe Guy. She wanted to see how high Guy, who had gained the ultimate power through his own will alone, could reach. For Velzard, Guy had become special, but for Guy, Velzard was not the same. Guy was calm and compassed, a tyrant who reigned over all things. But he was equal, fair, and treated everyone the same way. He would test it out and form a friendship with those who had overcome it. That was Guy's policy. She didn't mind the turbulent changes, and her normal life passed peacefully. Life with Guy like that was a little unsatisfying for Velzard. Because she'd done her best to make Guy look at her with her own charm, but Guy's attitude hadn't changed. What a terrible guy. She couldn't hate Guy for thinking that. On the contrary, she's getting even more attached to him. There were times when she joked and said how she really felt. However, it didn't work on Guy. Arrogant Guy. Impossible, Guy. A gentle squeak. Cruel Guy. Terrifying, squeak. And as a friend that his brother acknowledged, Guy. She loved spending time with him, who had so many different faces. At the same time, she was angry at Guy for not noticing her true self. You're a terrible person. If you're smart enough to see through everything, why would you notice my true feelings? Even though she thought about it that way, the thought of being rejected terrified her. That's right. As he lived with Guy, Velzard understood the emotion known as fear. Then, one day, a group of people who called themselves heroes came to destroy the peace of Velzard. Guy accepted the challenge from the hero as usual and stood up. That man, Rudder, was strong. Surprisingly, the match was evenly matched. A smile appeared on Guy's lips. Velzard bit her lip as she watched Guy enjoy himself. What swirled in her mind was intense flames. Anger. No, that's not it. It was jealousy. Guy would never show that face to Velzard. I can't believe he's having so much fun fighting. When Guy fought Velzard, he was careful not to hurt her, much like an adult dealing with a child. Otherwise, it would never have ended in a draw. Velzard was also hiding her true feelings, but surely Guy was the same. If Guy had seriously intended to kill Velzard, the current Velzard would undoubtedly no longer exist. And yet, he was giving it his all against Rudder. The moment she realized that, Velzard became aware of the jealousy that had sprouted in her heart. Ever since his older brother, Veldanava, had acknowledged Guy, Velzard had been troubled. She couldn't understand what the emotion that had sprouted in her heart was. But that was when she finally understood. Guy Crimson. This was the demon Lord Veldanava had acknowledged. He was strong, kind, and arrogant, a being that would never let Velzard have her way. Velzard admired Guy. And upon seeing Rudder make Guy serious, they regretted it, thinking, that should have been my role. Ever since that day when jealousy had blossomed, Velzard had continued to live with depressing feelings. And she's been worrying about it for a long time. She maintained her composure on the surface, and deep down, she continued to burn the flames of jealousy. As a result, the great goddess of calamity was born. Guy is kind to me, but he won't allow me to stand by his side. Is that because I'm weak? No, I am strong. I am the strongest dragon. No, I'm weak. After all, Guy won't accept me. Is that so? That's obvious. Then why does Guy always play with Rudder? Well, that's because I'm weak. I'm weak. If I were stronger, Guy would look at me. Are you going to look at me? Yes, that's right. Yeah, if only I were stronger. As long as I have the power. I can stand next to Guy. That is my wish. That's all I want. Watching the battle between Guy and Rudra, Velzard wished for power. That was the moment when the goddess of calamity was born. Velzard's patience has been inverted. Ultimate skill. King of patience, Gabriel has been reborn as king of envy, Leviathan, due to her jealousy. However, it doesn't mean it disappeared. Velzard's mental strength was formidable, and she managed to conceal her new authority without letting Guy catch on. With two opposing ultimate abilities, ultimate skill. King of patience, Gabriel, and king of envy, Leviathan. Velzard continued to be by Guy's side. And she kept waiting for an opportunity. Even Feldway's call was laughable from Velzard's perspective. Mechal's authority, the absolute dominion over those who possess the ultimate angelic abilities, known as ultimate dominion, is something that Velzard, who had been offsetting and concealing conflicting authorities, should not have been able to withstand. And yet, the reason she had followed Feldway was because the proposal from him was charming. If she joined Feldway, she could fight the now serious Guy. He was supposed to take Velzard's partner seriously, not playfully. There was another reason, but... that's interesting. I'm sure that'll happen. And the collaborator also gave their full approval.